Okay, so I'm going to be walking you through this bolting of this intersection here. Just pulling into the heading here on a diesel Loki. And we're just doing a corner in an intersection here in track drift. A lot of the videos are pretty raw. It's actually 2 hours, and it goes over a couple of days of bolting, do's and don'ts. First don't I see there. Oh, might want to wear some safety glasses. And a lot of this is older footage. My safety standards are quite a bit higher now. But old school track drift, sometimes you just can't get away from stuff. As you can see here, the platform that we've built, we've drilled some holes for rebar or drill steel in the wall, and then we've put planks along the wall, and then we can plank out to it off our scissor deck. And because we have to install ground support into areas we can't really get to, it's not like we don't have scaffolding or jumbos that can bolt the walls or McLean bolters or anything. So we're usually bolting off a muck pile or ladders and planks, and we just kind of make it work. So you can see here we've got a steel ladder to stand on other than the planks. And my partner here, he's pretty much just my helper at this time. It didn't take him long to get very good with these machines and be a full-fledged partner here, but at this time he's pretty much just changing my steel. And you can see with me moving the light around now, all the bolts in the back, which would be the roof, those are all 8-foot rebars secured with epoxy 2-part resin. So we have fast and slow resin, and we usually, 1 stick of fast, or 2 sticks of fast, 1 stick of slow. And the slow is usually 2 to 4 minutes set time, and fast is 1 to 2 minutes set time. And it's important to have your entire hole full of resin, and it keeps the bolt more secure. And so, as you can see here, my partner giving me a hand. Looks like I got a 6-foot steel on there. I usually prefer to start, with a 6-foot steel if I have the room, so long as I'm not, in a tight drift where I don't have room to start with a 6-foot steel, of course. But, if you use a 6-foot steel, you push that your leg cylinder all the way, and guaranteed you've drilled enough to install a 4-foot rebar. And you can, if you just push your leg like this, use your full leg cylinder with a 6-foot steel, you don't actually have to move you only have to move your leg once. So you'll see later on in the videos and some of the other bolting where you're pulling your leg up to advance the drill steel deep enough. And you can really see the rock drill oil in the air there. So that's why at that time we chose masks over safety glasses. As you can see, of course, we didn't really have very good footing areas. So I like to keep my visibility at 110% if you must. But I'd wear the dust mask usually all day, stay clean shaven. We had very poor ventilation in a lot of those areas. And you get 2 machines running, or even the big 3-boom air jumbo that we had. It was like you couldn't even see the oil in the air. It was so thick. And definitely working out on these platforms here. Good footing is a must. Good balance, coordination, and again with the 6-foot steel, you don't really have to push your machine into the screen to get your full hole depth. So say for example, if you start with a 4-foot steel and you're going to put a 4-foot bolt in, and you've got a large gap in between your screen and the rock, you won't be able to push that steel in far enough to install that rebar, your hole will be short and your plate won't tighten up to the rock. And that's kind of the whole point of the ground support, is you get those plates just zinging tight on the rock and that screen zinging tight, and don't give that rock an inch to move anywhere. And that's how you keep the rock there. I mean, if the ground wants to move, it's going to move. You can some of these deeper mines in the mountains, in these particular tunnels here in the track drift, we had lots and lots of ground movement. It would just swallow up bolts and blow the plates off and snap the rebar like nobody's business. So we were constantly rehabbing and constantly adding more layers of screen to keep the rock in place. So it sounds like my partner was just telling me my hole was going to be short there, shorter than an 8-foot steel. I mean, a lot of times you can't get an 8-foot rebar isn't actually 8 feet. It's usually 7 feet 6 inches, but you know, that only leaves you that little bit of steel. And if I'm only pushing a 6-foot steel, it's not going to go in. I had some kind of explanation for him. I couldn't hear exactly what it was, but I'm sure I had a plan. So you can see here, pulling the machine back. You know, I stop it, give it a rip and a bounce, and you know, if you keep your steel nice and straight coming out of the hole, it comes out easier. If you're resting all the machine's weight on the steel, it binds in the hole of the rock, and it makes it really hard to pull out. And that's one of the important things about drilling a nice straight clean hole is you know, your air cylinder there is really powerful, and it'll push that steel in bent, and you can easily make a jackleg steel wander off in the rock. And when you go and you have to pull that steel back, even if you have the rotation of the machine helping you, it's hard to pull that steel out sometimes. And if you're doing this for, you know, 10 hours a day, I've had days where I'm literally running this machine for 10 hours straight, and people are pushing rebars in and I'm pulling it back and pushing it forward and pushing rebar in. Me and this guy here, we've put in over, you know, I think one day we put in 58-foot rebar in a day, and I remember just being beat. There's a lot of drilling, a lot of pushing, and a lot of pulling. And of course, we're running 2 machines at the time. You know, he'll be running one himself, 2 stopers, 2 jacklegs. You know, it really gets things done when the more steel you got turning. So it looks like he's pulling up getting a 10-foot steel ready. So you'll notice that I drill about a half a dozen holes here, all from the same leg position. And because we're going in, we're taking the wall out and doing a corner and an intersection, the bolts, it's easier to fan out. So you can see it looks like he's putting a 10-foot steel in there. So it looks like I'm going 6-foot steel to 10-foot steel. And that just lets me drill more without having to move the leg around. The more you got to lift and move the machine, the more work it is. It's not that you're doing any less of a better job, but you know, it's a lot of work moving this thing around. So you'll notice too, a lot of the times I'll collar a hole. I'll start a drill hole in one spot. So I'll put my drill steel through one square of the screen, drill my hole, and then move my drill steel to another square in the screen, but put it in the same drill hole. And what that is, you know, especially in these slashes or bad ground, and when you're rehabbing, you're not just in a perfect arch in a tunnel. The screen has to get bent and morphed to wrap around the rock. And a lot of times when you get deeper in the hole, it almost changes the angle of your steel a little bit, and it can bind on the screen and rip the screen squares. And if you're planning on putting a rebar and a plate through that particular square of the screen, and it gets ripped, and then you try and push a rebar through there, and the screen is ripped, you can't really get it tight because you've now got a bigger gap in these screen squares, and the rebar plate won't tighten it up. It'll just come out, and your screen is no longer tight there, and you can't really adjust what square you're going to put your rebar through because it binds when you're going through putting it in the hole. Usually you got to have it go in the exact same angle that your drill steel went in, otherwise it just doesn't work. You can't push it in without ripping the screen. It doesn't fully tighten up. It just doesn't work very well. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll push the screen in with my drill steel, see what square is going to line up where, and I'll start my hole, switch my steel to that other hole, and finish drilling the hole. So you can see here that this next hole I'm drilling, it's not even through some screen, so we're probably going to hang some screen there in the future, and I have a bolting pattern laid out, so I know that the screen is going to cover that area, and once we push it up tight and attach it to the other rebar that we've previously installed, that we'll be able to push that screen tight and tighten it right up with a rebar. It can get risky if you're down too low and you put too much of a gap. Once you get the screen tight, you may not be able to get that hole you drilled for a rebar through the screen. Yeah, you can definitely see why we're wearing the dust masks there. There's quite a bit of rock drill oil in the air. As what I remember, it was very cold down there too, so a lot of that is water in the air and mist. Well, a little bit of game plan in there. Yeah, you can definitely see that. All the white at the bottom of the machine there where my hand are, that's all ice from water being in the airlines, and then it being so cold and it's just freezing up. Sometimes you got to make a little pick, or you take like a couple strands of screen, you make a little prodder, and you can scoop the ice out of the exhaust there in those machines, and when they start to ice up, they just run like crap. Your drill steel won't turn, it just doesn't drill very well. So right there, how I'm holding the leg cylinder, that's like ideal almost for the angle and the leg, and it's how you set it up and drill by itself. Well, it looks like we're going to go for a camera adjustment here. Yeah, definitely cold there. My partner's got his jacket on. And every time there's a camera movement in here, from what I remember, there's not really a lot of uncut scenes in here, and I'm trying to show the tediousness of bolting and staging and conventional mining. Get a quite a bit better view of our platform there. Oh, my partner, he's got a good trick there. He put the miner's wrench on the end of the steel, and it fits perfectly, and you can really pull quite a bit harder and give the steel a rotation to get it out of the hole there. Usually if it's binding like that, that's from it's either binding on the screen, or I got lazy and I or wasn't paying attention and let the the machine rests on the steel a little bit too much and got a bit of an angled hole there. Sometimes there can just be rocks or mud in the hole, and that'll make your steel hard to pull out too. So it looks like I'm trading off here. I'm gonna give my partner a try here in the jackleg. And it's always easier to pull your steel to your machine rather than putting your machine to the steel, because the farther that your leg cylinder extends, the heavier your machine is going to get. It's better to just pull the steel to the machine, rest the majority of it on your leg, and have a good center of gravity. Yep, lots of rock drill oil in the air. Those 2 buckets there, that's that ISO 150, and we actually have a big tank on our scissor deck that we fill up with rock drill oil, and then we can attach our air lines. We have 2 air lines attached to the scissor deck and 2 water lines to the scissor deck, and the scissor deck is built with an air tank and some water outlet valves on it. So when we roll into a heading, we just do 1 2-inch bull hose to the scissor deck, and then 1 water line to the scissor deck, and then we can always have our machines hooked up and ready to go, so we can just about roll into anywhere and unfold the wings, start bolting. So looks like he was a little unsure of what to do. I just said pull the leg up and push that steel. The communication is pretty hard underground too. A lot of times it's just light signals pointing and flashing at things. It's usually too loud to hear anybody talking, and especially when you're wearing dust mask, you can't see what the person's lips are doing. Lip read. It looks like my partner got his steel stuck here. So, that's one of the consequences of not having a nice straight hole, is it'll bind up and the machine won't turn it, and you got this 140-pound drill hanging off of this steel way up in the air. It's a pain in the ass. Yeah, little timeout here. Yeah, timeout. Okay, so here's another angle of our staging, and you can see a little better of the planks we got set up off of our scissor deck. There are a couple steel ladders, hang some screen. So we're going to be hanging some screen for all the holes that I just drilled, and ideally you want to have the rebar plates and the rebar holding the screen up as opposed to the push plates, and the push plates are much thinner, and they got tapered holes that are quite a bit smaller than the rebar plates, and you bang them onto the rebar, and the flared holes are flared outwards, so you can push them on easily, but the flares bind on the rebar threads, and it can hold the screen up there a little bit. It's nothing like a good old rebar, but the idea of the screen is you always want to have it overlapping of the previous round, so you're always bolting from good ground to bad ground or previously supported ground. So your last row of previous rebar will be all plates. So when you go to put your new row of screen on, instead of having to drill new holes in your previously supported ground, you use these push plates, which are just these thin metal plates, and they just tap onto the old rebar, and you just have one layer of kind of chintzy ground support. So it's ideal to use actual rebar and plates. And you see we're getting ready to push a couple of rebar here for all the holes that I've just drilled. There's probably about a half a dozen of them. We got it looks like a 4 and a 6 foot drill steel with a dolly on the end, and the dolly is just like a really, really, really big heavy duty socket, and it's welded to the end of that drill steel. And you can see here I push the bolts in with all of my strength and the machine strength, giving it lots of rotations, because as I said earlier in the video, we use a 1 and 2 minute epoxy resin as well as a 2 and 4 minute epoxy resin. So the idea behind that is the 1 to 2 minute stuff, it sets up really fast, and it's quite hard to push those rebar into the hole once you've filled it full of that resin. So we do 2 fast and 1 slow, depending on the ground and how fast you can get those bolts in there. You can change up your mixtures, but we use the 2 fast, 1 slow, just because we're pretty fast at pushing these bolts, and it takes less time for fast resin to set up, obviously. So I can push a bolt, spin it, and on those boxes there's actually rotation specifications on the faster you rotate your rebar into your hole, the better it mixes the resin. So the resin they'll mix with the rotations and the little bit of heat that is created from pushing the rebar in. So you see that dolly's quite heavy. So I just rest the end of the drill steel on one of the ladder planks and just balance the jackleg there. My partner getting ready to just putting all the rebar in, and it's really important that you get those rebar through the correct square that's been drilled, and you kind of have to predict how the screen is going to morph around the rock and what it's going to take to get that screen right tight against the rock. So if you put it in the wrong square, a little bit too high up from where your hole is, the machine and yourself will not have enough power to push that rebar in tight to the rock with the screen binding. And if you are strong enough, or you get a good enough bite with the machine, you'll just rip through the screen, and your bolt will be no good. I mean, your bolt will be good, but that part of the screen won't be, and you'll eventually get a bag of broken rock in that area, and it'll create a big bag of loose in that screen, and eventually it'll just rip out and fall on the ground, and hopefully it doesn't bury somebody. Looks like my partner's giving the water just to double check, crank it off. So as you can see it earlier, all the water in the air, having any water going through your machine while you're pushing bolts, it really takes the power of the machine down. So you just want to have straight, full air power. So as I'm pushing them, so I just pushed 3 rebar. Now I'm going back to the first one that we put in, and all the resin and the epoxy should be set now, and that allows me to really tighten up the bolts now. So on these 8-foot rebar, there's probably about a 1.5 foot of threads, and the nut on the end of these rebar are I'm not sure how to explain it, but they've got like a metal cap on them, and the rebar has to be tightened with the resin and the power of the machine and the stability of the bolt will cause the top of that nut to rip away and tighten up. So you can see quite the balancing act we got set up here. The idea of this platform here too is we have to move it several times a day, so it's got to be pretty minimal, otherwise it takes forever to tear it down, set it up, tear it down, set it up, move it all around. It's a lot of work. So the minimal stuff you can have as a work platform, usually the better. Sometimes you're packing those planks and those ladders up a muck pile. If you're doing a big diamond drill cutout and you're 20 feet in the air, I know you want to have more, but it's a long ways to carry stuff up. Putting some of these bolts in, you really gotta. You're holding on for dear life, trying to break that nut. And as I said before, it's like I don't know how to explain it. There's like a cap on it, a steel cap. It's all forged, and you just gotta break it and thread it through. Yeah, you can see my partner giving me a hand there. Just holding the thing straight up and down and bounce back. Yeah, you see there's the power moves there. This old sports trick. Another rebar. So I find that if the ground will let you, usually it's easier with the walls. You don't want to do it with the back, which is the back is the roof, ceiling, the top. I'm not sure exactly why it's called that, but it is the back, the walls. The bench is the floor. Rib is the shoulder, the side. And especially with the walls, I find it much easier to just drill all the holes that I can with one leg movement, install the bolts, and carry on. So long as you're not putting any type of your work area underneath loose. So you see my partner there, he's getting some push plates ready. They're usually just held together with a bundle of steel wire. I think they're usually in bundles of 50. And there's different sizes of them depending on the size of the rebar that you're using. And he's actually going to use some here. No, oh no, that was the plates. See the steel plate there. Get it to the right screen square. Push her in. Oh, right on the air hose there. He must have been confident that the foot wasn't going to puncture it, but it was definitely not a very good move. But looks like I got lots of hose slack there, and like I said, I'm sure he wasn't worried about the leg kicking out. We've got specific spots that we would move the foot there. The foot is like You know, it's got like 4 spikes on it, and it helps you lock into places like those ladder rungs. Like if I really had to, I could take that jack leg out right to where my feet are, throw it on one of those steel ladder legs, and start drilling. And I wouldn't be worried about, it's, it's got the little claws to grip onto stuff like that. And, it helps us get into those crazy areas that you need ground support. And like the stoper, I'm sure you could put a claw on the stoper. But stoper just being the vertical drill, I'm sure it'll be later on in this video. Or probably day 2. We're just getting this first slash bolted up here. Let's see. Putting in those lower bolts. Not even necessarily lower if we're off platform still. They were just pushing all these bolts that I just drilled the holes for. You gotta have a pretty good prediction of where the screen is going to line up to. Is if you're pushing bolts plus and installing them, or pushing them in with the machine and tightening the screen and putting them in by hand. Just because when you tighten the screen up, especially when you're in your rehabbing areas or ground falls, and it's not just a normal tunnel or arches and a flat walls, that like I said before, you really got to morph the screen, and tightening the bolts will makes the screen move around and stretch and bend, and it changes the placement of all of the screen squares. And you can see from pushing in these closer rebar that the first couple of feet pushing the rebar in is mainly based on rotation, and I'd say probably the last 5 feet, well, I guess not last 5 feet, he's booting the screen there, get it tight, help the machine get her in. Yeah, look at that footing. Doing that off a plank pretty much. Sure, anybody that's ran one for a little bit, they know that usually a lot of people have a hard time running on flat ground. Never mind ladder rings. Getting some more rebar ready. That's a big thing when mining, especially in development. It's just you and your partner. You got to make every minute count. And anytime that drill's not turning, you're losing time. definitely really see a lot more of the physicalness from this angle. Yeah, and just let it down. It must be done soon. Day one must be pretty close to over here if I'm putting the machine down. Move the leg again. Sometimes, it's easier to drill the holes from one leg movement, but when you're pushing the rebar, you really got to have 100% of the machine pushing that resin, especially if you're using too fast. That fast resin, if it's not at a date or been frozen, and it's good resin, it hardens up fast, and that machine, if you don't have 100%, you won't be able to push the rebar in all the way, and it will harden up before you can get it tight to the rock. And then you pretty much gotta cut it off with a hacksaw. Well, I guess putting the machine down, that's the end of day one. I'll put a little link here for day two, and we'll carry on bolting here for this intersection.